Creamer Media's Mining Weekly is speaking to Isabel Geldenhuys, the president of the Southern African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy. Firstly, Isabel, let me congratulate you on your presidency. And let me kick off by saying, what would you like to achieve with your term of office?
Thank you very much for having me. So in my run-up to becoming the president this year, it takes about 6 years of involvement in the office bearers of the Southern African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, which we fondly call SAIMM. And my vision for the year is to embed all the hard work that we've been doing over the last 5 years in terms of reviving the interest in collaborating and technical conferences and sharing of knowledge. So we've embarked a process of identifying what is it that makes SAIMM invaluable to our members. And we're starting to communicate that message a lot clearer. And that's one of my big plans for the year, is to work a lot on communicating to our members what we are offering them. And obviously, we've also adapted quite dramatically to what happened in the last 18 months, especially because in the past, SAIMM has always offered incredibly valuable and very well attended technical conferences, technical events. But with COVID, all these things just came to a sudden halt. So we undertook this entire strategy of going online, offering webinars to our members, engaging people, and it also really balanced really well with what we were already doing in terms of reaching to our members who's not just in Johannesburg, for example. So reaching out digitally to our members and giving them what they need to develop their careers, to share knowledge and grow as professionals in this industry.
Well, it is called the Southern African Institute, and that tells you something. So surely online can really improve your reach to Botswana, Namibia, and everyone else around you.
Exactly, and it's even more exciting because SAIMM is part of the GMPA, which is the Global Minerals Professionals Association. So we have incredible big plans to strengthen this online presence so we can talk to people who's working in gold in other parts of the world. We are talking across commodities because there's so many lessons to be learned. And of course, South Africa's mining and metallurgical industry has got more than 100 years of history. So we're incredibly fortunate to have this wealth of knowledge in SAIMM's databases. So sharing of this knowledge is a big passion of mine.
And you know, it's time to share, because I've never seen so much change come about so fast. And there's also those two big words, climate change, and they're bringing all sorts of new demands. You are so well versed with pyrometallurgy at a time when climate change is demanding change. How can the world make pyrometallurgy and smelting less energy intensive, more environmentally friendly?
So it's such a wonderful, broad and exciting area. So I always say to people, so nature gave us minerals in a certain format, which thermodynamically, in other words, requires energy. There's nothing we can do about it. You need, for example, if we look at the ferrochrome industry, we can dream of making that a green industry by using hydrogen to reduce the chrome, but it doesn't work. There's certain requirements. We have to take something up to really high temperature. You have to give it some carbon for it to react. Now, stainless steel makes the world go round. So how do we look at this problem differently? We say, yes, we need energy, but it doesn't mean it has to be fossil fuel energy. There's lots of things that we can do. It doesn't mean that if you produce CO, that you should let it go into the atmosphere. So a lot of my really exciting areas where we look at is at renewable energy, of course. And we always think about, solar panels, and then you convert that to electricity and maybe you can run a furnace with it. But it's actually way more exciting than that. You can say, why don't we think about solar energy and concentrate it and to heat and use it directly? So we have been working a lot in pyrometallurgy on direct heat, using the heat from the sun in a concentrated mode to dry, to preheat. The other exciting areas is, of course, that a lot of processes in leaching, hydrometallurgy, is actually at low temperature. So there's no reason you should plug it into the wall. You can use a lot of these fantastic renewable energy processes and technologies that are just running onto the market at the moment to lower the overall footprint. So you never should look at this as a single problem. It's always a very coupled, complex problem of minerals processing and smelting all together. And that, I think, is the focus, is this understanding that it's not one discipline. We all have to work together. Just as much as we talk about data as this big trend, data is meaningless unless you apply and categorize it and do something to it to turn it into something useful. And I think the same thing applies to metallurgy. There's a very good book that's titled, We're Metallurgists, Not Magicians, And I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to work together and bring interesting transdisciplinary thinking into metallurgy to solve our big problems.
And I know that you're very close to pyrometallurgy, the big hot pyro. But these days, some people are looking more closely at hydrometallurgy. And we know that the Cal process is already rolling out at Sedibelo. Are there ways of doing things that are less energy intensive, perhaps?
So there are obviously, I think, applications, but where you are talking about small niche applications. But again, I'm one of those big believers at looking at the life cycle, the larger scale ecosystem. So you don't look at, if you're looking at protecting elephants, for example, you don't just try and protect the elephant. You try and protect the entire ecosystem that it works in, that it lives in. So it's very easy to say, the pyrometallurgy is we need to get rid of pyrometallurgy. But the ecosystem requires us sometimes, especially in bulk commodities, where you're talking about the ferrochromes, the ferromanganese, iron, we're talking about massive bulk commodities where when you put something through a hydrometallurgy process, you really want it to already be concentrated. So you want to do something to it, so you put the least effort into making it a metal. So every process where you put something into it, you want to put concentrate into it. And so if you listen to the mine, you never just put the run of mine ore into a smelter. You try and clean it up so that you don't waste energy. So a lot of our effort has to go into how do we put in the least possible waste into a process that just goes through and nothing happens to it and then has to be managed. And that's one of the challenges we have with the hydrometallurgy processes, is that they often have significant residues and waste that needs to be stored, managed, cleaned up. Whereas if you have often a pyro process and it's not all through equal, but you often end up with a clean byproduct that you can just use as backfill. So you can never look at a discipline just under one big umbrella. We have to be really specific about commodities and things like that.
So what are you seeing that is really exciting you at the moment?
I think, so I have had experience in a credible number of commodities and been very fortunate in my career. For me at the moment, the two commodities that are really exciting me, because of the pressures that they were under, are ferrochrome and the PGM industry. Both of those have been, in South Africa particular, through basically stressful times. And a lot of it is about cost of energy, because you need electricity, and it's not just the cost, it's actually the availability. What's really exciting me is how people have actually gone and absolutely thought outside the box to optimize their processes to make ferrochrome competitive. And in the last while, I think it's been exciting to see, as the commodity prices have been blooming, how people have just jumped in and new people who have entered the market. So it's very exciting to me and to see how the industry is starting to become a little bit alive, not just hopeless. But I think the big thing, if I think about technology, I think the things that really excite me is all around a greener and a focus on being more efficient. So from a renewable energy integration into smelting is the thing that really makes me excited. And not just the obvious, using it cleverly. There's a number of incredible, clever people looking at solutions.
And what about all those off gases? You go to a smelting operation or furnace, there's so much off gas. Can't we use that for electricity and recycle things?
The ferrochrome guys, for example, already do that. So it's very easy, especially ferrochrome. It's very interesting is that if you put in the raw materials, about 30% of the product is metal, 30% of the product is slag, and 30% of it's gas. And if you have a modern furnace, a closed furnace, that gas is really good quality CO. And most of the ferrochrome guys are using that gas to preheat or dry or even generate electricity. Even the ilmenite smelters have been doing it probably for the last 5 years. So the furnace guys are definitely ahead of the curve, but there's definitely opportunities to use off gases to help you save your energy. Otherwise, you just put it into the atmosphere and you're not recovering any of that heat. Other exciting opportunities, of course, if your byproduct is slag, like say, for example, the PGM guys, you have these massive slag byproduct that you just basically, it comes out at say 15 or 1600 degrees Celsius, it's molten. The next step would be to find a way to extract some of that waste heat from the slags.
And we are hearing a lot these days about green hydrogen. We know we've been producing grey hydrogen with Sasol since 1950, and they talk about the blue hydrogen, but I like the green hydrogen because at least it leads you to zero if possible. Can't we use that more in mining and steel making? I see the Australians are talking, everybody's talking.
There's a very interesting story if you think about it. Obviously, we want to use green hydrogen. I mean, that would be the best solution for everyone. So there's a lot of processes that has a byproduct of the grey hydrogen. So now you have hydrogen ready, you may as well use it. So I think one of the things that we have to do is to say, yes, it's not the perfect solution, but it's worse to just let it go to waste. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that everybody who's working in South Africa towards that sort of the fuel cell economy, there's quite a large investment by many companies. I mean, Anglo is already investing a lot in using the fuel cells on the mine. So that is an incredible opportunity for hydrogen to come into an actual useful application. So I honestly believe that the big mines, we have all these big moving machinery, those kind of things, you can move away from diesel and switch to a hydrogen-based fuel system because you have a contained ecosystem. So I'm very excited about what I'm seeing. And of course, with us now being able to install that massive 100 megawatt independent producers energy, those guys can start producing hydrogen from renewable energy. So I think that we're in this exciting evening before the big break. I think we're on the verge of people jumping into that. The mines are ready and the furnaces are ready. And in Europe, there's a lot of work on iron making using hydrogen. And Mintek is also doing work on that in collaboration with Europe. So there's a lot of interest in hydrogen, and I think that there's definitely in South Africa going to come something of it. I think the South African government, the Department of Science and Innovation, they have been supporting this hydrogen economy concept for nearly 20 years. So there's knowledge, there's know-how, there's people who know what they're doing. So I think we're on the verge of nice breakthroughs in hydrogen.
We're trying to encourage junior miners, and they always have to come across this thing where they have to get things smelted elsewhere and they've got to go into a long supply chain. Is there anything more that can be done for junior miners? Can they do more for themselves in this area?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Something that I've been grappling with for 25 years. So for a long time, we've tried different models where we have, for example, where Mintek offered even toll smelting facilities. But the problem is that it costs money, So a lot of time, it's not so much because you have access to ore, but it's so your investment in capital, that bridging to get to a smelter is really, really high. So it's much easier just to put up a couple of spirals and you make your concentrate and you sell it, because that barrier to entry is very challenging. So I don't think there's an easy answer. But what I've seen in the last year or so, as commodity prices are stronger now, a lot more people can start getting little smelters off the ground. And I think that's always a good sign, because for the last almost 25 years, we've not been building new smelters. You have one or two exceptions, but generally there's not been new entrants. So existing guys would build their furnace bigger or they would modify it, but there's not been a lot of new entrants. And in the last year or so, there's been new entrants. They're not big yet, but the fact that they're learning how to smelt, because you are not just about money. It's about getting the right people. It's a complex process to run. So people starting small, and I think that's what's going to be the secret to getting new entrants into the market. And then the second thing is, like, I think our ores are starting to lean towards smaller facilities. You have PGM ore concentrates are full of chrome, and there's all these little side tailing processes. So there's going to be all these different kinds of ores that is ideally suited to a smaller furnace. So I think it's a case of a lot of things have to go right. And we have the technology, we have the ores, and if we can get the renewable energy or self-generation into place, people will be able to run these smaller furnaces and build up knowledge and cash, and then be able to build bigger and bigger furnaces. So I honestly think the stars are aligning for the smaller guys.
But what about those people? I see them pushing things down the road. The urban miners, they're collecting some metals as well, hopefully. Is there anything we can do with recycling that these people can be able to put their metals into a DC furnace or something like that?
Yeah, so there's actually a really interesting history. About 10 years ago, we started trying to say, is it worth putting, say, e-waste into a DC furnace? And in my time at Mentec, we actually developed a process where we can go and without electricity, but with gas. So you can build these small furnaces all over the country at collection points, because the big problem with e-waste is actually, or urban waste, is actually not that how to process it. Once you put it at high temperature, you can break down anything. The problem is collecting enough of it in a centralized point that is able to sort it, because the solution for e-waste is actually about sorting and making sure that you sort it optimally. And then I say there's a lot of technologies. So I think Mentec's smelting process with gas has a huge potential for a smaller operator, a collector, to build up their own little smelter, produce the metal, and then get into the market of separating the metals out of some kind of hydrometallurgy process. So I think there's a lot we can do. We just need to get the right people together to talk to the collectors.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly, speaking to Isabel Geldenhuys, the president of the Southern African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy.